Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nello Reads channel. Today we'll be browsing through some r/ProRevenge stories. Our first story of the day comes from Tay Cody. Manager targeted me because of my family priorities. It cost her job. I have worked at a home improvement store for close to a decade now, about 8 years roughly. The first 7 was in North Carolina before I moved up further north to be with my best friend and her husband, who I learned was pregnant with my first godchild. As such, I transferred up to a store in the area and put my nose to the grindstone. I worked garden before and did that for some months before I started to be moved from department to department, as this store was low on staff. However, this was not full-time. My old HR had dropped the ball, and this store believed I wanted part-time. Having already moved, I grabbed a part-time overnight job at a gym to make ends meet and continued to work, all the while asking repeatedly for full-time at the main job and never getting a definitive word back or change. Several months into this, my goddaughter was born. As I lived with my friends during this time and during the start of COVID, I spent quite a lot of time helping to raise her, and we became close. I would take time off that I was allotted to help look after her, but there was a little problem. Half a year into this change, and I had made a good name for myself. I did not have a good deal of friends per se, but I was respected for my work ethic and willingness to help out anyone in any department that asked me. Enter a new assistant manager. The ASM was abrasive to staff and used to getting her way. The first I heard of her was when she outright fired a girl working the front desk because of a Playboy tag on a jacket. Myself and several other employees organized a walkout in protest of this and succeeded in getting the store manager to reverse the decision made by the ASM. This was not our first walkout, having done this in the past when another ASM, the current's predecessor, made sexist comments about a cashier. Soon after this, I was given full time by the operations manager, working in receiving for an irritating supervisor. We often did not get along, especially as my godchild got older and I took on babysitting duties while her parents worked and slept. It was not something I minded, as I adored the child. I often talked about her with my coworkers and loved to show pictures and stories. However, this was not something shared by my higher-ups. My supervisor was upset that I could not work overtime to help him, as we were the only 2 in receiving for the store, because of either my second job or babysitting. And soon after the second walkout, I was made aware of a rumor circulating around the store, that the child was in fact my own daughter that I had fathered outside of my friend's husband's knowledge. The source of the rumor was unknown, but my ASM had made disparaging remarks to me in the past about men taking care of children, so I had my theories. My holiday plans, asked off in advance as soon as our electronic system allowed, were canceled without explanation, both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I had never missed a major holiday since I moved north, and I had asked the same days off the year prior and had gotten them off before the ASM arrived. Strike 1. Soon after this, my supervisor, whom I work closely with every day, had a positive COVID test, forcing me, per company rules, to self-isolate until I could get a positive or negative test myself. During this week, as it took a full week to find a place with enough room to give tests thanks to the new variant, I was harassed repeatedly by text and phone call by both management and my supervisor to track down an at-home test and get back to work ASAP. All the while, I had to inform everyone I was in contact with, including my friends, family, and roommates, that I had been exposed, risking their own holiday trips and plans. Strike 2. Thankfully, my test was negative. A week after this, the Northeast gets slammed by a snow and ice storm. I drive a 4-wheeled vehicle, so I made it in, but near the end of my shift, I was made aware that my friend's husband had been injured and stranded in a car accident on the ice, and so left to get them home and their car to a service station. To add it all, they lost power in their home with an infant, leaving me the only person they could turn to with a vehicle and power. I will admit, I had a few sick hours left, but informed work that I would be out on a family emergency. For that week, I called out each day with ongoing family emergency, with snow and ice still coating the streets and power still down throughout our city. Every day, I was hounded by calls from management demanding I return to work regardless. This would have not only risked my own safety, but would have stranded my family at my apartment with no way to get supplies or get home once the power returned. Strike 3. I was done. Early in the morning that following Sunday, I walked into work and placed my resignation letter on HR's desk. That is important later. I had tendered it to be immediate, as I live in an at-will state. Was it petty? Yes, I will freely admit that. I had given 8 years of my life to this company and asked very little in return. As I was leaving, I crossed paths with my supervisor, who asked angrily if I was finally coming back to work. I informed him of my decision to leave, ignoring his provocations, and left to go home and sleep. Several hours later, I received the gift that would ignite my semi-accidental revenge. A single text from my ASM. "We will see how long you can take care of your love child without us." Well, seems I found my probable source. My friends had been made aware of this rumor from the start. I did not hide anything from them and did not want any kind of rumor, however unlikely, to reach them from anyone but me. They are my closest friends and compatriots, and have given me the greatest gift in the form of my godchild, whom they insist I call my niece, as I am family. Love child feels like a slur against her, and I am not cool with that, and neither are they. However, they informed me of the monumental screw-up my now former ASM had made. It was time for corporate HR to be made aware, and so I began to compile my evidence. The text from the supervisor, the call records and messages left, and this holy grail of a text message. If I was going to leave, I was at the very least going to give some blowback on the team that had been so willing to target me. What happened after is secondhand from friends I had still at the store, and so I cannot entirely verify all of it, but the ASM played herself. The following day, a meeting of management and supervisors was convened, where the ASM made it known that I had been fired, not self-terminated, for job abandonment and immorality. And unless I am grossly misinformed about the nature of American retail work, immorality is not a fireable event. To my supervisor's credit, he defended me to the ASM and was fired on the spot. The store's HR rep, having earlier gotten my printed termination letter on his desk, made it known that I had indeed not been fired, but left on my own, and the ASM attempted to fire him as well in front of the staff. And from there, it spiraled. According to my source, entire departments began to walk out or outright quit, having had their own problems with the ASM. Appliances quit. Garden left with their manager to work at a competitor's, as he had been working on this well before my saga began. Front desk walked out in protest, as it came out that the ASM had threatened and blackmailed several Muslim part-timers to not wear their headscarves if they wanted hours. Lumber, Receiving's main partner, quit. ProDesk joined the front desk protest as one of their number. A Sikh man had also been threatened. Cashiers, both head cashiers quit, and the other trained cashiers walked out with the desks. Operations manager had informed the district manager and quit outright before he arrived, walking out with the HR rep and my old supervisor. My source's last report of the ASM was seeing her sprinting to her car after having heard that the district staff was inbound, and the store's manager was forced to shut the store down for the next 2 days. I've been in contact with the other injured parties, and we're compiling all the evidence we've collected, as several of the families are hiring lawyers. I suspect the company will attempt to keep this quiet. I just never suspected that anything like this would happen. I have a full-time position at the gym upcoming, and I've been enjoying the extra sleep and time I get with my family. I'm never working 56 to 64-hour weeks ever again, and I will never darken the doorstep of that store again. I hope my ASM enjoyed the temporary rush of power. I suspect she won't get it ever again, at least not in manager positions. It is so crazy to think that OP leaving was kind of just like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, this entire store was barely staying afloat with all the drama the ASM was causing. I guess it just seems some people never progress past high school and think they should bring drama to the workplace for fun. Most people just want to go to work, put in their hours, and go home. There's no need for drama, rumors, and secrets, so I'm glad the ASM finally got fired for it all. Our next story comes from Evidently Apostate. I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat. I'm a millwright who specializes in rebuilding natural gas turbines. I run with a very top caliber crew where everyone has a role to fill. My role is overseeing anything that's lifted with a crane. My technical title is rigger. If a load fails, it's my fault. If someone gets hurt while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. If equipment is damaged while I'm in control of a lift, it's my fault. The incident in question happened about 2 years ago, but we'll need to go back a couple years further to get the backstory. I was a freshman member of the crew and had demonstrated competency in rigging, so after roughly 6 months with this group, my superintendent put me in charge of all rigging. I wasn't the fastest rigger, but I was safety focused and insisted on doing it right every time, even if it took a little longer. This meant that my superintendent didn't have to watch over every rigging task and could just go relax because I had it under control. Another millwright joined the crew about the same time I did. I'll call him Larry. We didn't get along at first, but after a few months we became friends. Larry was the act now, think later type, much like the superintendent I travel under. Larry was prone to making mistakes because of that attitude, but he was very fast and worked like a mule at all times, and I respected that. He wasn't especially skilled in any one area, so he had no special position. That meant sometimes he'd get put on less glamorous work, and I soon learned he was very jealous of my position as the rigger. At times, he would make comments like, "I'm gonna take your job," not in getting me fired, but bumping me down a rung and him taking my spot as rigger. He came up behind me while I was looking over my checklist to point out something I may not have checked yet, and if supervision was near, he'd make sure it was heard. At this point, I should mention this. I stick out like a sore thumb on this crew. I was raised in a very strict Christian cult, but in my mid-20s, I realized what was going on and left at great cost, losing my family and friends because of strict shunning rules the cult practices. Some of the stricter things still stick with me, like I've never been intoxicated, I don't use tobacco, no recreational drugs, I speak professionally without slang or colloquialisms for the most part, so these traits stick out from a crew of men that travel the road and work in harsh environments away from home for months on end. But Larry, he fits right in. Larry quickly became the superintendent's puppy, bringing him gifts of his favorite alcohol, staying out late after work with him, even rooming with him on the road. I, on the other hand, leave work, hit the gym, cook my food for the next day, and make sure I get at least 6 hours of sleep so I can perform the next day. I realize that puts me at a disadvantage socially in the workplace, but I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Anyways, fast forward about 18 months, we're starting a project just before COVID hits. About 2 weeks into the job, I have to attend a mandatory class through my union. It's a 40-hour class and in a different state, so I'll be gone for pretty much an entire week with travel time. I get permission from supervision and leave, with Larry rigging in my absence. A few days later, I'm laying in bed stressing about the final test I have to take the next morning. If the test isn't passed, the entire week is wasted. I always psych myself out before a test, but in reality, I don't have anything to worry about as I'm a good student and test well. My phone goes off. It's a text from Larry. "I love you, bud, but I'm cutting your throat." I reply, "What are you talking about?" "When you get back, I'll be the rigger. You can do the bad work from now on." I'm not proud of my response I came back with, but it's how I truly felt in the moment. Be careful about cutting the throat of someone smarter than you. I'm far from the smartest person you'll ever meet, but I do enjoy reading, studying, and learning. And being smarter than Larry wasn't an accomplishment by any stretch of the imagination. The next morning, I passed the test and headed back to the job, where Larry had in fact usurped my position as rigger and was lording it over me as I went about doing the tasks he would normally do. To be completely honest, it was kind of like a vacation at first. Get paid nearly $40 an hour to clean parts or torque flanges with no stress? Sign me up. But I was upset. I was upset because I knew I did my job better than he would. I knew that he got along better with the superintendent because of their similar personalities, but I didn't feel that I should lose my position simply because Larry had more in common with our superintendent than I did. Regardless of that, I was now dealt these cards and I had to play them. Just 3 days after I got back from class, though, the job was shut down. COVID was just now sweeping the country. Out of an abundance of caution, the plant shut the project down until further notice. We were sent home for about 3 days and then called out to an emergency shutdown where the turbine had crashed. We roll out and are on the job 48 hours later in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We get right to work. On this particular unit, you pull the entire roof off in 2 sections with a crane to open the enclosure. Compared to many things we lift in a project like this, the roof weighs very little. The turbine rotor may weigh over 100,000 pounds, but the roof usually weighs around 7,000. Lightweight. But it is very large and there are critical parts around the roof that can be damaged if not lifted carefully. Typical procedure is to be on top of the roof after it's unbolted, be in a full body harness, and tied off to an approved anchor point capable of holding at least 5,000 pounds per OSHA regulations. We then slowly take the weight of the roof with a crane until it's floating, and then climb down off of it and continue the lift until it's set on the ground or on a truck to be moved. The superintendent instructs me to go on the roof with Larry and assist him. Do whatever Larry tells you to do. Okay, boss. I put on my harness and climb to the top and begin to assess the situation. The rigging to lift the roof is 4 5-ton chain falls. It's capable of safely holding 20 tons, well over the weight of the roof. The crane is also well overrated for this lift, even with the boom extended all the way out in order to clear another building on the way to the ground. Larry has it all rigged up, but no tension on the wire rope slings. And then I notice his crucial mistake. He has forgot to account for boom deflection. When a crane takes the weight of a load, the boom flexes down. Depending on the crane setup and the weight of the load, it can mean that while your crane hook might be centered in your load with no weight on the hook, once you get the weight of the crane on the load, the crane hook could be anywhere from a few inches to a number of feet off center, which means that when the load comes off the ground, it swings. Swinging is bad. Always. Enough weight swinging could tip the crane, crash into equipment, crash into a person. It's very dangerous. At this point, I start calculating. Is the weight enough, even swinging, to tip this crane? No, not even close. Is it enough to break a chain fall? No, again, not even close. Are there any people working around us that could get hurt? Nope, it's just us. Is there any equipment that could be damaged if it swings? Yes, an electrical control panel which has all power killed to it and has been disconnected is in the swing path. I decide to let Larry go for it. He looks at me and asks what I think. I tell him, "This is your show, boss." He asks me what I mean. I look him in the eye and draw my finger across my throat. He gets nervous because he knows exactly what I mean. He starts double checking everything and still doesn't notice the boom deflection. After a couple minutes, he decides I must be talking out of my butt and proceeds with the lift. I stop him and remind him to tie off with his harness. He doesn't realize it, but we're about to go for a ride. Generally, when I'm rigging, I first find out what the thing I'm rigging to weighs. It's a vital piece of information. If I know what it weighs, I can have the crane operator track how much weight he has on the crane, and I'll be able to know when the object should start to pick up. If we get to over 10% more than the object should weigh, there may be something stopping it from moving, and we need to stop and reassess the situation. Rigging could fail, the object you're lifting could jump into the sky, all kinds of mayhem may ensue if a hidden bolt holding something together breaks because you use too much force to lift it. I ask Larry if he knows how much the roof weighs. He doesn't. I do, but don't tell him. He starts signaling the crane to slowly hoist up. The operator complies and starts lifting. I'm watching the boom get pulled more and more off center. We're probably 2 feet from the center of the load at this point, swinging a crane that could travel nearly 4 feet. I stop Larry and ask him to see how much weight is on the crane. 11,000 pounds. 4,000 more than what it should weigh. This roof is in a bind because we're not picking it straight up, but at an angle. It's either not going to move or we're about to fly. I brace myself. Hoist up slowly, Larry calls over the radio. Boom! The whole roof shoots a good 2 feet into the air and swings wildly towards the control panel. Larry and I are riding it like pirates in a crow's nest in a hurricane. We crash into the control panel, bending it over at a 45-degree angle, destroying most of its components. People start pouring out of the nearby trailers to see what the commotion is all about. The crane operator is yelling over the radio asking what the hell just happened. I'm smiling, Larry is shaking. He sees me smiling and knows that I knew. We get the roof set on the ground and are met by our superintendent. He's chewing Larry's butt hard. He gets to me and asks why I let it happen. I just say, I just did what Larry told me to do. The superintendent is no dummy. He's seen a thing or two and knows exactly what went down. Larry's demoted and I'm reinstalled as rigger immediately. And a few shifts later, it's all smoothed over. Larry and I are actually good friends now. We've been through a lot together and have each other's backs these days. He's now the foreman of our crew and lets me do my thing. Failing your way to the top is still a valid way of progressing in my field, but I'm happy for him. He's actually good at it. And I guess that's all there is to say about that. Okay, so now that is some serious pro-revenge. The OP pretty much risked his life just to prove Larry wrong. I don't know about you, but there's no chance I'd ever stand on top of something that heavy that I know is gonna go flying without saying anything. But hey, at least now you can say he's flown a roof before. That's not something you see go flying every day. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and feel free to check them out on Reddit in the description below. If you haven't already, make sure to drop a like, and I'll see you in the next video.